Is quickly in for big minutes? Is Ingram going to be load managed? Who wins the sprint for minutes on the wing? It's all about the Raptors rotation on today's Locked On Raptors.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It's your favorite part of the day. Thanks for making Locked On Raptors your first listen every day. I'm Vivek Jacob. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors for 8 seasons across several outlets. You can follow Locked On Raptors on X, Instagram, and YouTube. And be sure to check out the Locked On Raptors Discord, where you can talk all things basketball, but especially the Raptors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. It is Tuesday, September the 16th, and I am joined by a special guest. You could even say especial. You can find him over at the Athletics NBA Daily Podcast and Raptors Republic, among others. It is Esfandiar Baraheni. What is going on, my man?
What's up? What's up? I like the especial thing. That's very good. I honestly, maybe I should put that in the Twitter bio. Just, why not? That would be cool. Thank you for having me, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I had to change it up. Last time we had the whole, everything everywhere all at once. Now we got the especial. We'll see what happens with the next appearance. But for today, we are going to get into the Raptors rotation. You recently did a video about it. You kind of broke down the minutes as well in terms of how you saw things shaking out. So I thought it would make for a fun discussion as we kind of get through this middle phase before preseason and training camp and all of that. So to start off, just to bring up your rotation, I thought one of the most interesting points of it was the minutes distribution at the wings. And so RJ Barrett averaged 32 minutes a game last season, obviously had high usage, big demands on him because of the injuries and whatnot. This season, there is going to be competition. There is going to be, Jacoby Walter looking to ascend. Grady Dick will be in the running for big minutes. Ochai Agbaji is in there. Jamison Battle. And so you've got RJ Barrett going down to 28 minutes a night. So let's start there. What do you feel Darko is going to see that maybe keeps him under 30 minutes a night?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the presence of Brandon Ingram will immediately shift some of the minutes for a lot of the guys on the wings. Just because, look, Grady Dick averaged 29 minutes last year. And in my thing, I have him at around 20 minutes. Jacoby Walter averaged 25 minutes. The roles are going to change for a lot of these guys because of the presence of Brandon Ingram, who even despite Darko Rajakovic's style for wanting to move off of the ball and, off ball cutting, basically quick decisions, et cetera, I think still will be a high usage player. Ingram will still have the ball in his hands pretty frequently. There's actually another player that I didn't give a ton of minutes to specifically for this reason, because I think the ball handling responsibilities will be kind of spread out between 3 guys, and Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, and Emmanuel Quickley. But generally for RJ, I think it's just a presence of 4 minutes less per game with the presence of a guy like Brandon Ingram. It's kind of fair, even given the fact that there are, I guess, some questions about the fit with him, Scotty, and BI as your wing trio starting out. In my video for RJ, I kind of made the pitch saying, well, this is actually a guy who can fit with those guys. We saw it in a brief amount of time where he played off of Pascal Siakam and Scotty Barnes. He was an excellent cutter. He had the most efficient season of his career in the first 32 games for the Raptors, where he was excelling as a cutter, excelling as a transition finisher, really working to, I think he shot like 62% on twos in that short amount of time. Did not shoot like that last year, to your point, because of the high usage that he was dealing with, because he was operating as a pick and roll ball handler more. So I think RJ's role is going to change pretty significantly here because of the presence of Brandon Ingram, because this team wants to be more competitive. He got a chance to experiment last year, but now I think he just needs to shift into a role that helps this team win more. And that's why it's like the difference between 32 and 28 minutes.
Yeah, no, as you noted, RJ shot 60.5% on twos in those 32 games from the 23-24 season. Effective field goal percentage of 60, which is incredible. Shot 39% from three. And again, it comes down to just having him in a role where he's just always doing what he's best at and not asked to do too much. The one big thing we all want to see next season is him get that free throw percentage up, because he's the guy who likes to attack the basket. So it'd be nice if, he got to the line and actually made his free throws. Hopefully, as some have said, seeing Jakob Poeltl finish with a higher free throw percentage, gives him maybe a kick up the behind to say, hey, you know what, that can't be happening.
That's a good point, actually. If you look at Jakob's free throw percentages over the years and him shooting better than RJ, that just can't happen for a guy of Barrett's capabilities. Can't happen.
Yeah. And so I think those are some of the challenges in front of RJ that you've noted. Well, I think what's going to be interesting with RJ for next season, because he had all these reps handling the ball, and I do agree that even though Jamal Shed is technically the backup point guard, he might not see a lot of minutes because of the other guys who can handle and maybe lead the offense. Yeah. I actually think RJ's name is someone who you could potentially have as the de facto point.
Yeah.
And then you open up those minutes for Jacoby and Grady at the wing positions. It's just about having, then enough defensive cover. But I think that could be maybe an underrated or a less talked about avenue for Darko in this upcoming season. What do you think of that?
I love that point. I think when I was building out this rotation, I was kind of thinking of pairings, because that's how coaches tend to try and maximize their rotation. It's like, all right, we're going to try to have at least two starters on at all times. Yeah. Sometimes they'll go to one starter. You can think of the Kyle Lowry plus bench lineups of old. I think they'll maybe do that with Scotty Barnes this year, where they'll force him, especially at the end of quarters and at the start of some quarters, to lead some bench lineups and carry those lineups in a big way. But in terms of starting pairings, I think Brandon Ingram and Jakob Poeltl are a good starting pairing. You could argue IQ and Jakob Poeltl are also a good starting pairing. But I actually think RJ and IQ make a lot of sense as a pairing as well, just because of IQ's off-ball prowess as a guy who can play off of the catch, can attack closeouts. And just because of the mutual connection that those two have had, the kind of chemistry that they've developed over their years in general. And to your point about RJ being able to kind of handle the ball, he had the best pick and roll season of his career last year. Was he like a wildly versatile pick and roll passer? No, but I think he can make good decisions. His ability to get downhill really helps him generate offense pretty quickly. He can generate a lot of threes for players because of that. I think even last year, I can remember countless times where he had that wraparound pass to the corner, and it would either be Jacoby or Grady or someone, or Ochai, spacing to that corner and shooting that three. That's a good source of offense for 5-6 minutes a night. And so I could see a version where RJ is leading bench units too. It just depends on what Darko likes more, because I think, the defense is a question, and not just for RJ, but just like, how are you going to sustain defensively with Scotty off the floor or with Jakob off the floor? Those are your two defensive pillars. And I think staggering those two will be really important in those minutes where the starters are out too. So that's sort of the main question as you look forward to the rotation, is how do you keep that defensive identity that you want to establish while also giving enough offensive juice elsewhere?
Yeah, I think for me, any minutes where you have RJ running point, Jakob Poeltl has to be on the floor, because I think they have really good chemistry together on the offensive end, and I think you just need his level of rim protection if RJ is going to be out there on the court. And then you complement him with guys like Jacoby, maybe CMB is in there, whatnot, and then you can figure some stuff out. So just to break down the rest of the wings, you had Jacoby and Grady both at 18, Ochai and Battle both at 14. Obviously, Battle brings an important skill set to this team.
I should note, I have it as Ochai / Battle. So it's like
one of the two gets 14.
One of the two gets 14 minutes.
Gotcha.
And so it's like one of those guys is not playing on any given night. And
Yeah.
I think to what you're about to say, I think the likely scenario is that Battle is the guy who doesn't end up playing on most nights because of what Ochai did last year too, you know?
Yeah. So I'm with you there. I do think between Jacoby and Grady, this is where we get that interesting battle of like, hey, like this is what Jacoby is giving us defensively. This is what Grady is giving us offensively.
Yeah.
And it's a big season for Grady, right? I think this is a season where, you know, last season you kind of ignore the 3-point shooting percentage because he was taking so many difficult shots.
Yeah.
And now with so much talent on the roster, presumably this team is healthy, you expect him to have much better looks. And so you expect the percentage to go up as well.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at Grady's numbers when he has an open three last season, I think he shot 45% on open threes last year. But he took more defended threes than open threes. And I think on defended threes, he was like 35% on threes. I think ultimately that number will change. That ratio will change, and he'll have more opportunities to shoot open threes. I will say I am banking a lot on Brandon Ingram here. And I think we as Raptors
we
fans,
all are.
I know, right? Yeah. We as people who cover the Raptors and Raptors fans are banking a lot on BI being able to kind of like churn this offense and make it better than what it was last year. And that's a lot of responsibility on a guy who, one, has had an injury-riddled year, and two, has his own offensive kind of like flaws, if you will. I'm very curious to see how that works, because I do think BI as a pick-and-roll ball handler does generate a good amount of threes for his teammates. You can look at Trey Murphy from the Pelicans times. You can look at Herb Jones from the Pelicans times. A lot of their assisted threes are from Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. And it's because those guys were the main ball handlers for them, right? But it's also because they generate a ton of attention, especially in the middle of the floor. And I think Jacoby, I think Grady, I think Ochai, they could, even Emmanuel quickly, to be honest with you, they can really maximize like space around a BI Jacob pick and roll. And that's what makes me so excited. You mentioned RJ and Jacob having great chemistry. You could argue like 4 guys on the team have great chemistry with Yak, right? Like IQ and Yak have pretty good chemistry. I think Jamal and Yak have pretty good chemistry. RJ and Yak and BI and Yak, I think, will be a pretty seamless fit too.
He's just a good big.
He's just a good big. He's just a good big. That's the point there. But to what you said, like that's what makes this wing situation really interesting, because a lot of those guys can be interchangeable. And you mentioned Grady's defense. I think that's a big swing for this season. A lot of people are saying who might start in place of RJ. There are conversations about that among the fan base, whether it should be a Jacoby, whether it be an Ochai, whether it be a Grady. I think RJ slots in as the starter on day one. I think it's his spot to lose. And I think rightfully so. I honestly think rightfully so. I think there's a world in which he could thrive in that starting unit, especially if that catch and shoot 3 is there. But in terms of offensive juice, like, yeah, you need Jacoby to shoot well from 3. You need Grady to be able to shoot better than he did from 3 last season. You need him to be able to attack closeouts better as well. And you need him to not get hunted on defense. It's a lot to ask for from Grady in this season. That's why rubber needs to meet the road for a lot of players on this team, not just Grady, but a lot of these guys have to kind of live up to the expectations that we've had for them.
That's what happens when you have a season with real expectations. Coming up next, we are going to get into the center rotation. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashers. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. Honestly, I love how fast it kicks in and that it's sugar-free, so I don't have to worry about crashing later. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. And we are back at it, ready to get into the center rotation. We mentioned Jakob Poeltl and all the great chemistry he's going to have with the starters. But as we look at the minutes shakeout behind him, obviously we've got Sandro Mamukelashvili on the team now. You've got Colin Murray-Boyles, who might be in the mix for some center minutes. Maybe Jonathan Mobo. We'll see how much Scotty Barnes plays the 5. How do you see that center rotation playing out?
God, it's a great question. I think it will be a little bit of feast or famine here for the Raptors. And it will basically be like, how do we survive the minutes Yak is off the floor? Because Yak can't play Yak can't play 48 minutes. And I think, I mean, you look at his numbers throughout his career, I don't think he's averaged more than 30 minutes a game in any season of his career, if I remember correctly. I think he will have to do that this year, though. I think he will probably have to play like 31, 32 minutes a game. Just because of necessity for this team. And so outside of those 32 minutes, you have 16 minutes left to survive without Jakob on the floor. And I think a lot of that surviving has to do with the defensive side of the ball. That's why I lean with a combination of Mobo and Mamu together, kind of splitting those minutes, either playing one of them or playing them both together. I've kind of likened this to a better version, hopefully a better version of the Chris Boucher, Precious Achiuwa minutes, where you have Chris Boucher's floor spacing, you have his ability to move and cut without the ball, but you also have Precious Achiuwa's defense and just his size and rebounding. And I think the same thing can kind of apply to this Mamu Mobo thing, where Mamu can stretch the floor, he moves well without the ball, he obviously can attack a closeout. And then Mobo can be your defensive Swiss Army knife, can switch out to defenders, can rebound, can crash the offensive glass. Like, that's sort of the version of this bench mob that makes sense. And then how do you fill out the rest of that lineup when those two are there? I think you need floor spacing for sure. So maybe you have one of IQ or Grady and Jacoby, or you have Ochai in there. And you probably need to have Scotty Barnes in there as well, because I think that leans into the defensive identity of what that unit can be, which is switch everything. Let's try to basically force turnovers, get out in transition. And you try to survive those minutes. In the 16 minutes that Jakob is off the floor, you try to figure out a way to play smaller, but also play more intense, play more high octane basketball, pressure the ball more, which I think they can do more often when Jakob is off the floor. And that's the version of this team that can find an identity without Jakob.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see if Yak can get his minutes up to 32. Maybe some nights get up to 36. We'll see if that's possible. I think the encouraging thing is, I think maybe we've seen in the past, especially before the Raptors completely overhauled their roster. Those games when they were playing with Fred and Pascal and OG, where Yak wasn't on the floor in closing time. One, because, you can really depend on him to knock down his free throws. Two, because, you're kind of getting caught out in terms of what you want to do defensively, and him constantly getting pulled away from the rim. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if Darko faces any of those decisions this season. And I could definitely see the Raptors going smaller to finish certain games, depending on the matchup, where maybe now you have Scotty at the 5. Maybe Grady's having this great night, so you've got to have him out there. Maybe, Jacoby is having one of those great two-way nights, and it's like, okay, we got to have him out there. And I think that's going to be interesting to see play out for Darko and how he makes those decisions there. Obviously, it's encouraging that Yak has improved that free throw percentage. That makes him a bit more reliable in closing time. But I think Yak's minutes are going to dictate a lot. And then it just comes down to how much you want to lean on Scotty at the 5. I don't think Colin Murray-Boyles is ready for minutes at the 5.
I agree.
I would almost pretty much exclusively keep him to the 4, maybe some minutes at 3, and that's about it. And then, as he gets his feet wet, as he gets more comfortable, then maybe, you can start to expand it.
Yeah. One of those, honestly, one of the main takeaways I had from Summer League, and this is not to knock Colin Boyles at all, who I'm working on a video on today, actually. He was smaller than what I thought he would be. And he's wider, which will help him be a good defender on the wing. And he has quick feet, which will help him be, a good defender on the wing generally. I think he will, just because of his length and his sheer width, will be able to, like, just generally off ball, be a very, very active and proactive player. But in terms of dealing with fives,
Isaac Jones got you shook a little bit, didn't he?
yeah, I don't know. Look, I'm just saying, like, it's going to be tough if he has to guard. I don't know, man. If he gets switched out, not even switched out, but like, let's say he takes on like an Embiid or a Jokic. I don't think he has. And those are the top level talents we're talking about. But even if you go a little bit lower down the field, I'm just not sure if he has the size to be able to guard those guys yet. Maybe he will find a way to leverage his width and his length eventually. But to your point, I don't think he's going to have minutes at the 5 to start the year, unless he's Draymond right out the gate, and we're like, all right, this is one of the best defenders of this generation coming up. But I think that'll take some time for him to figure that stuff out.
Yeah, I think, in terms of his defensive potential, I think what's exciting is if he actualizes it, he could get to a point where he becomes a great matchup against, say, for example, you're going up against the Bucks and Giannis and Miles Turner, where you want, now CMB would be comfortable, out on the perimeter having to defend a Miles. If he has to, switch on to Giannis, you feel okay about it. And again, I'm saying this is something he has to build into. I'm not setting the expectations right now that this is what he's going to do, but he has the tools to maybe become that type of guy. And again, Miles Turner, not the most physical inside, doesn't have a ton of post moves, is not going to score a lot inside. So again, you feel comfortable with that type of 5 matchup as opposed to, say, your Jokic's and your Embiid's and whatnot.
Yes. Yeah. And like I've seen people do the whole, because I've had it in the replies, especially for this rotation tweet that I had, where it's like, oh, Mobo should not be getting minutes over CMB. And I'm like, I don't think they're really in competition with each other specifically. I think, yes, Mobo.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think Mobo did play some 3 and 4 last year, but I think just based off necessity, I think he will play more backup 5 this year. Or at the very least, his role will be relegated to playing backup 5 more, just because this team is trying to be competitive. I mean, last year they were in this developmental cycle where it's like, hey, let's see you take these threes. Let's see you stretch the floor from the corner. Let's see how much you can do this. And I think he was better than people expected. Not great, not good, but like better than what people expected for a guy who 2 threes in college. So I don't know if he's going to be a guy. Maybe he plays some 4 next to Scotty, but overall, I think he's going to be a guy who plays the 5, will be asked to play bigger players. And just because of his rebounding ability, especially offensively, I think he plays a bigger position than CMB does heading into year 2. It feels like those 2 guys get compared to each other because of their individual skill sets. And I think I understand where that comes from. But in terms of their roles for this team, I think they just play 2 different roles for what this team needs specifically next season.
Yeah. To wrap up this discussion, you had Mamu at about 14 minutes as well. Was that an either or case? Or
that is an either or case. So, I mean, to your point about like matchups, I think like if you're playing a team that doesn't have the greatest defensive centers, I think you can have Mamu out there stretching the floor. I think Mamu will work really well next to Scotty because of Scotty's ability to like find guys moving. And Mamu is a pretty good mover without the ball. Like he was, I saw this yesterday, but he was in like the 89th percentile in terms of spot ups. And that wasn't just threes. That was like attacking closeouts. And that was because of the gravity of some of the other players on the Spurs. But I think Scotty and BI can provide that same level of gravity. Maybe not Victor Wembanyama levels of gravity, but just being able to create and generate open looks for you. I think Mamu will have an opportunity there. And then if you need to have more of a defensive presence, if you're looking at a team like you said with the Bucks, where you got to switch 5 out. You're playing this 5 out team. You're playing Giannis, who you can't let get downhill. Then you might want to do Mobo more because of his ability to switch.
Yeah. No, I think the Scotty Mamu pairing, that's one that makes the most sense where, you could have offensively, obviously, Mamu is the spacing 5 and gives Scotty the space that he needs to operate and get inside.
Yeah.
And then defensively, you have Scotty take on the 5. And then, you try to, depending on the lineup, you try to hide Mamu as much as you can.
Yeah. They're going to have to be so creative when Jakob is off the floor. And I think that's one of the most fascinating decisions for Darko next season is how are you going to survive those non-Jakob minutes? And like, how are you going to put your best player in Scotty Barnes, in my opinion, in a position to succeed without that insulation of having a backup 5 or having a starting 5 next to you? Because, to your point, they have had Scotty be the 5 for them before. There have been flashes and moments where he's absolutely dominated. I think there was like a Mavs game a few years ago. I don't know if you remember this, but it was in Dallas.
Yeah.
And he played the 5, and it was just like, he was incredible. I think he had a near triple double. They almost won the game. And it was just like, okay, this is the version of Scotty at the 5 that makes a lot of sense against specific matchups.
And I also think that was one of those games where it was kind of like he didn't really do much in the first half.
Yes,
and then they tried to change it up, and it's like, okay, we'll just play him at the 5. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this makes sense now.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe there is a version of Scotty at the 5 with a combination of CMB, Mamu, Mobo, something like that kind of gives them some perimeter defense and floor spacing. But then how do you complete the equation with the other guys on the floor? Is it the Grady, Jacoby, Jamal, what's the machination of players that makes sense next to that duo?
Yeah, we are going to look at the machination of the entire rotation coming up next. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is here making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And we are back to wrap up the Raptors rotation. So quickly, you've got Yak at 32 minutes, Scotty 34, Ingram 32, Barrett 28, Emmanuel Quickly at 30. So let's focus there for a second.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Quickly at 30, Jamal Shed at 10. I think this is going to be a big season for Quickly. I think the Raptors need it to be a big season for Quickly. He is the team's best shooter. He is going to be relied on. For me, I think ideally, so far as a Raptor, we've seen him average 7 3-point attempts per game. I think this season has got to be somewhere in that 8 to 10 range. Yeah. The Raptors finished in, for yesterday's episode, I did a whole podcast about the Raptors and their 3-point shooting. The Raptors finished 28th in terms of 3-point attempts last season. And I think Quickly has just got to be a huge part of getting those attempts up because they need that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I do think, again, the presence of BI will allow him to be off ball more. And it'll be easier for him to get those shots off the catch versus as a pull-up. Because when you're operating as a pick-and-roll ball handler and when you're one of the main point guards of a team, you want to get other guys involved naturally. So you can't come out and pull up on every single shot. Even though he was an excellent pull-up 3-point shooter, you have to try to get downhill. You have to try to create something for the rest of the team. The onus will be less on him to do that and more on him to take advantage of the advantages other guys create for him. So he can attack closeouts more often. He can try to get into his floater bag while the defense is tilted. He can shoot off of the catch more frequently. And I think that will help him up his volume. I think that'll help him to a better season. And, health permitting, I think he will have a bounce back year just because it was such a weird season for him last year. I mean, between the hip injury, then the elbow injury, it just felt like he never got a fair kind of shake at things. I'm very
it's almost like the Raptors had some kind of ulterior motive.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, your elbow hurts? Please rest it as much as you can. Yeah, exactly. That's fair. But he's very important to the team because like every lineup you can think of, and I think over this last 30 minutes that we've talked of, you can make the argument that he should be in every lineup because of his 3-point shooting ability, because of how well he can work off of the ball. And that's why he thrived. That's why he was a 6th man of the year candidate in New York. That's why he was touted as a guy who can do more with the Knicks, was because of how well he played off of the other guys. I think he can get back to that this season with Toronto.
Yeah, in terms of minutes for Quick, I'm actually looking at something closer to what he had in his initial stint with the Raptors. And so going back to the 23-24 season, he averaged 33 minutes a game.
Okay.
I think that the Raptors will kind of just need him to be close to that. And I think, there's been some recency bias in terms of, the time that he's missed and people seeming to assume that he's a bit injury prone. And if you just look at his time in the NBA, that's just not true at all. Like, said it yesterday, I'll say it again. In his first 4 seasons, 64 games, 78 games, 81 games, 68 games. So I'm penciling him in for, 65 games minimum. Get eligible for those awards. We'll see if he's in line for any of them, but I do think that I have full confidence that he will play at least 65 games next season. And that's where, if he can say make 200 threes on the season, I think the Raptors will take that. I think the Raptors will be happy with that. And I think the Raptors will be in a good place if he does that.
Yeah. I think like to what you mentioned earlier about Jamal, I think between BI, Scotty, RJ, and IQ, there are a lot of ball handlers on this team. And so Jamal's utility, I think he was the one who he kind of got the short end of the stick here in the rotation I built. He only played 10 minutes in this rotation. And I find it tough to find minutes for him because, yes, he was good off of the catch as a 3-point shooter last year. I think it was like 36%, which is decent. Like it's solid enough to keep you on the floor. I think the defensive stuff, we'll see how that pans out in year 2. Again, he plays an important part to the identity of this team defensively, but I just find it hard to get him up to like 15, 16 minutes a night, given the amount of ball handlers that we have and given the amount of like actual good creators that can play for this team. And the utility of a guy of Jamal off of the ball doesn't make sense as much as Jacoby or Grady or Ochai. Those guys feel like they can excel more next to those star creators than Jamal can.
Yeah, no, I think I'm with you. I think, at the end of the day, like he's like, when you look back, the reason the Raptors were able to play, say, Kyle and Fred together is because both had legit size to them. They could take a bit of a beating in the post, but that's not something that Emmanuel Quickley can do. So if you were to play Quickley and Shed together, you run into that conundrum. And then when you look at putting other guys next to Shed, there is the spacing issue. So I thought, I was curious to see what the 3-point shot would look like at Summer League. I wasn't encouraged by it. So we'll see what comes along here at the start of this season. I mean, let's face it, Ochai looked terrible in Summer League last year.
He did.
And then he showed up for the regular season ready to
career
go.
year.
So,
I think like the rotation for this Raptors team is almost as fascinating as all the other conversations that we've heard about this Raptors team, whether it's like all the questions long term, what the capability of this team is this season. I think a lot of that actually rides on their rotation. It rides on the fact that, like, how can they maximize the group of players that they have? A lot of the questions, I've heard this on a lot of podcasts, but like people have said there's only one ball. And so how are the Raptors going to do this? I think a lot of the questions about that will have to be addressed via the rotation. Like, you have to find a way to get all these guys content with how much they have the ball in their hands and how much they can create. And winning cures all. So if this team is winning and if they found an identity that they can ride on, then I think you'll see guys be more happy with getting lesser usage like an RJ, or fewer on-ball opportunities like IQ, or Scotty being more of a play finisher versus a creator. Like, I think that will be okay at the end of the day. If this team is winning, they have to find that winning formula, whatever that is. That's why this team is so fascinating this season.
Winning cures all. I think we're expecting a winning season for Toronto, but hey, if things don't come out hot out the gate, then we might see a bit of controversy.
Teetering for Peterson, or snooze for booze. Trying to think what else is there.
I don't know if it's gonna get that dark. I think it's gonna be a real problem if it gets that dark. If the Raptors go into tank mode again, that's a lot of money in that starting five, man.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. If that's why this season is so interesting, because like obviously all the financial implications. There's going to be trade rumors at the deadline for guys like RJ and Ochai. I mean, they were already in that this summer. That's why it's so fascinating, because this team wants to compete. And if they do compete, then their February looks a lot different than if, like you said, they're struggling to try to win games. So, yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see.
We will see. S, thanks so much for joining me. Let the people know where they can find your work.
Yeah, man. You can come and read both myself and Vivek at sportscasting.com. Yes, we do a bunch of NBA stuff there. Listen to myself, David Dufour, and Zena Keita on The Athletic NBA Daily. I cover the Toronto Raptors for Raptors Republic, so you can do that as well. Check out our YouTube and audio side of things. But yeah, appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you for hopping on. If you want to carry on our discussion, head on over to the Locked On Raptors Discord. The link is in the description. And just so you know, the Locked On NBA Top 100 is here. Voted on by the NBA hosts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Our Top 100 was formed by experts that cover these teams and players every day. Find the full list on Locked On Sports today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.